Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sounds of the Diaspora, Artist to Artist, conversation with yours truly, Dion Parson. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest tonight, a gentleman that I've known for many, many years. He's a wonderful pianist, a composer, educator, producer. He's Grammy nominated, good friend of mine. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Elio Villafranca.
Hey Dion, how you doing, my friend? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. How's it going?
It's going well. Thank you.
Good. And you're in New York City right now, correct?
I'm in New York. I just finished my Juilliard classes, so I'm tapping to a room here and then to be able to talk to you.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join the show and hang out with us here at Sounds of the Diaspora, where we talk about, all the great things that's coming from the Afro-Caribbean diaspora and other places and try to connect that dot. So you're from Cuba, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I was born there and raised in a small town called San Luis in Pinar del Ri, which is like the west part of Cuba, the most western province in Cuba. And my hometown is known for tobacco. Most of the Cuban cigars come from there. But it's a very rich town in Congolese music. That's how I was introduced to drumming through my neighbors being from the Congolese traditions. My direct neighbor was the leader of the Congolese group there, and I used to see them all the time rehearsing, performing, tuning the drums with fire, and it was really fascinating as a kid. Of course, the fire was a fascination, not so much the drum at the time. But eventually, the drums was getting to me. Eventually, I started feeling more in touch with the drums, and that was the area where I was born.
Great. Real quick, just for our audience, so the tuning on the drums with the fire, that was because the drum head was made from a natural skin, calf house, right? Yes. So they would wet it and heat it up to heighten the pitch and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. That type of drum is called tambor yuca, which is one of the main three forms of Congolese music. One is palo, makuta, yuca, and kimfuiti is the other one, but yuca is one of the other mains. Mm-hmm. And then those drums are made out of avocado trees. And the reason why they use avocado trees is because the avocado tree has something particular. When the avocado trees, the trunk gets old, gets hollow inside, or softer inside, not 100% hollow, but it's easy to extract the inside part out. And then with fire, they will kind of smooth the inside part. And then they put the animal skin on top, they nail it. And then of course, they wet a little bit and they nail it. And then they use the fire to stretch the skin and then to tune the drums. And as a matter of fact, those drums are considered the first drum ever played in Cuba. Because those drums are not religious; they're secular drums, and then the confection of the drums is so easy because basically it's a trunk, and then you nail a skin on it, and then you tune it with fire. I mean, it can't get any easier than that. Different from the Yoruban tradition, the bata drums that you need to. The shape of the drum is very different, and then you have to kind of. The tuning system of the bata drums, on the arara drums, on the abakwa drums, it's very specific, very complicated, but not with the Congolese drums.
Okay, so that's great to know. So that was your first influence to the music through the Congolese drums, and many people don't know this about you, but you are a percussionist. You studied percussion.
Yes, but even before the percussion, that introduction, I was a painter. And my first vocation as an art in the art was painting. Then from that I got into the guitar. I was playing guitar for some times, and then from the guitar I went to percussion because I did the audition to go in the music school as a guitarist, but they didn't have any more instruments, any more guitars to give me for me to enter the school. And then they said, well, but we do have percussion available. And then since I was already introduced to the drum, but seeing my neighbors playing, I was like, oh yeah, that would be cool. I can play the drums. But I didn't know that the type of drumming that I'm going to be doing was not that kind of drumming. I'm going to be doing classical drumming, which is a different thing. I wasn't playing the drums per se. I was playing snare, timpani and xylophone, marimbas. It was nothing like what I was hoping to be playing at first.
Right. So that's a big contrast, because when people think of the drums, they think of a drum set, but they don't realize that the percussion family covers so many specific components of the drums. Classical, you have rudimental drumming, and like you mentioned, the timpanis. You have all the mallets, the xylophone, the marimba. But the interesting thing is, from what you shared with me over the years of knowing each other, none of your cultural heritage was presented in the music school. It was strictly classical.
No. It's strictly classical and Russian style, not just classical. I'm talking about classical Russian style, which means the Russian type of training in classical music is very specific, very specific, very strong, very hardcore, I should say. So I was trained in that environment. So for me to learn the other part of the drumming or the Cuban music per se, I have to do it outside of school. So I used to go a lot to rumbas and ceremonies and things like that, where I can have access to this music. At first, do that, and then we cried a lot, really hard to get some training in folkloric music. I had a teacher. His name was Lino Neira, who was the director of the Cathedral of Percussion, the percussion faculty. And then he also fought with us. And then finally, they allowed some rumberos and some santeros to go into the school. The reason why they didn't want them there was because, once again, it was a Russian, basically, institution. So my teachers were Russians. A lot of teachers that I had were Russians. So they felt like because the people who played this music were in the hoods, like in the barrios. They didn't have an education. They didn't have anything. There was people born to play the drums, and the really rough neighborhood in Havana. They didn't want to bring those people into
school,
into the school, because they felt like, no, this is a high class school. These people who have doctor degrees and blah blah blah, and these people, they don't have a degree. But eventually, they allowed them to come, and then I started receiving some actual, real good education on traditional Cuban music, percussion, for that say. Then the piano came along. The piano came along because I was good at percussion, but there were people better than me. Let's put it that way. So, and every time I went to a jam session at the school, there was jam sessions that we used to organize. All the drums were already taken. The only thing that was never taken was the piano.
Oh, okay.
Because nobody knew how to play jazz or popular music, or in a jam situation, because everybody was training classical music. Nobody knew how to do it. And then I didn't even know how to do it either, but I was interested in, and I was jumping to the piano, started kind of like trying to do something. And then eventually, since I was the only one doing that at that moment, they started like, whenever they had like a jam session, they started calling me, hey, would you come and play the piano for us, because we need a pianist to do like a descarga, like a jam session. And then I started doing that, and then that's when I realized, well, if I'm going to be doing this, I need to know what I'm doing. And then that's when I started taking the piano very seriously. That's when I started going to Chucho Valdez's home to learn standards of Gonzalo Rubalcaba's house, to kind of like to copy, because Chucho, Gonzalo, Hernan Lopez Nusa, those were the people who had the information, because those are the people who, at that time, they could travel outside of Cuba, because Cuba was very locked. It was very close. Nobody was allowed to go out, but Chucho was able to go out, and Gonzalo was able to go out, and then we'll come back. They came back with information. So then I would go to their homes, and they would show me the books, but said that you can't take them with you. You have to somehow copy it there. So I would bring a manuscript, pencil, and we spend the whole afternoon just copying things while I see Gonzalo practicing in the next room, and I'm just copying stuff.
That's quite interesting.
That's how I got to this.
Yeah, because back then we didn't have, we didn't have the internet and all of that stuff to just share information. So you had to go in and find it, and then figure out a way to get it for yourself. That's
Exactly.
yeah. That's. I mean, being growing up in the Caribbean, a lot of people don't know the challenges that we have. And then you being in Cuba, and it's a different government, it's a different society, it's a different culture. You are really isolated from the rest of the world.
Yeah, jazz was forbidden, was actually illegal. Anything that came from the US was illegal. So we have to, like, I remember like 2 a.m. We only have like, there was one tape player that belongs to a friend of mine, percussionist too. His name was Raul del Sol. He lives in Miami now, and he's a singer. But he has the only tape player in the entire school. So
Wow.
of course, there was only few people who were interested in playing jazz. So, but still was a few of us. And then whenever we get a tape that we can record some music, then I had to ask him for the tape player. And then sometimes the line was very big, very long.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, the tape player is free at 2 a.m. I was like, okay, I get it. I take that time, and I will go outside. I had to go outside the school because, we were living in a boarding school type situation. It was like the dorms were like military style. There was no room. There was like a big open place with bunkers.
Oh,
and
okay.
then, of course, like you couldn't really listen to music there because you're going to be waking everybody up. So I will have to go outside of the dorm, go outside of the school where it was an outlet. There was an outlet, like a lamp, like maybe like, I don't know how many meters away from, like far away from the school. And then we used to go there, connect the tape player there in that outlet, and then listen all night to records.
Wow. You have to be really, really committed and determined to learn that music to go through all of that. Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but it paid off. It paid off because Elio Villafranca is who he is now because of that upbringing. I know it was a challenge. We didn't quite have it that difficult in St. Thomas, but the resources was limited as well on that scale. But you did a great thing. So did you graduate from the school as a percussionist or as a pianist?
I graduated as a percussionist and as a composer. But
Okay.
in the education of Russian training system, when you enter the career as a composer, you have to play a very good piano. So basically, they teach you at the same level that they train the pianist to the same level. I had to play Rachmaninoff, Prokofiev, Stravinsky. I had to play all the bigger pieces that everybody else was doing, because in a Russian type of training, not only they train you to be a composer, you have to be a pianist and you have to be a conductor, an orchestra conductor, because in a Russian style, you're thinking about Stravinsky and Prokofiev. They were all composers, but they were great pianists and they were conductors. So that's the mindset. They was all together. So my training as a pianist, I didn't get a paper as a degree, but the training was as high as any other pianist training. But I didn't get the paper necessarily because I started as a percussion when for you to get the paper, you have to start like 6 years old or something in that vein. But I started in percussion, and then I went to composition, and then the piano was what I was doing anyway.
Right.
That was my career. Basically, even though I was doing percussion, but I was just have my own jazz group. I was playing with all the bands as a pianist. After what I mentioned, after the jam session, was doing the jam session, then word of mouth, they started commenting, oh, this is another pianist and then people started coming to the school looking for me to join the band as a pianist. And then that's how I started playing with Carlos Varela for 8 years as a pianist, because he came and found me. It's like,
okay.
And then that's how,
Interesting story. So when did you transition to America? How did that happen?
1995. I was just graduated from school, and I was teaching at the university because ironically, they didn't like when I was, doing jazz. They, had to do it